Dawn of the Zeds 3rd edition is the deluxe version of what began as a solitaire zombie apocalypse game in the tradition of the States of Siege system. This 3rd edition, as you will see, adds so much more. In addition to playing the game solitaire, you can play cooperatively with various other human players, or competitively between a human and a Zeds player. The game includes 4 separate rulebooks: the bare-bones no-brains rulebook, the basic rulebook, the level-up rulebook with various levels of increasing complexity, and finally the A to Z rulebook with all the rules, basic and advanced, all in one manual. The game also includes the Farmingdale dossier with all the information and rules for each unit in the game, and the setup and epilogue book, which includes multiple scenarios and variations for each level, as well as the epilogue for the game, depending on your final score. I hope you appreciate the quality of the components throughout this video presentation. It is truly amazing. But today we will be playing a standard game of the Apocalypse level, one of the advanced levels in the game. We're about to begin the playthrough of the Apocalypse level for Dawn of the Zeds 3rd edition. We have side A of the map board, which includes tracks to keep track of event actions, supply levels, ammo points, and the dreaded infection level. At the left-hand side of our table, we have the Fate deck and the Event deck. We will not cover the instructions on how to prepare the Event deck. Suffice to say that it consists of 26 cards. This is the standard solo game. We have to survive all 26 to be able to win. The game also includes 6 six-sided dice, and the ugly Z there represents a 1. In this game, we as humans want to roll as high as possible. Low die rolls almost always benefit the Zeds. And we have here the counters that we will be placing on the map. The yellow ones are the villagers. We have also the civilian units with their defiant markers. We have markers to keep track of actions, as well as heroic civilian units, which we will be picking one to begin the game. And here we have our heroes. There are 9 to choose from. We can select one, and randomly we select the other 3 to complete 4. Now here in a tray to the side, we have additional counters and markers that we have set aside for play, and these include here in these 2 draw cups to the right the regular Zed units that will be appearing in the game, and the dreaded Super Zeds that may appear either by an event or by an uncontrolled outbreak, and we really don't want these guys showing up in our game. And then here we have the hit markers and the comatose markers and other markers used for play. So we're about to begin the setup for the Apocalypse level, Dawn of the Zeds 3rd edition, coming up. Because we will be playing the solo game, we have 1 player action marker that we will be using. And we begin by rolling 2 dice to determine the initial level of supply points. And we rolled a lowly 4, so we begin with 4 supply points, and to determine the number of ammo points, we eliminate the lower of the 2 dice that we rolled. So we eliminate one of the 2s, subtract 2 from 6, and we have 4 ammo points at the beginning of the game. And the infection level always starts at 0. In this game, we start with 4 heroes, 1 that we select and 3 that are selected randomly. And we pick Colonel Kingman, so he will be one of the 4 heroes that start the game. We place the remaining 8 heroes in this Dawn of the Zeds cloth bag that the game brings, and we draw 3 heroes, which we have already drawn off camera, and these are Rusty Staub, El Toro Loco, and Sheriff Hunt. and our 4 heroes start in the town center space. In this game there are 4 tracks on which the Zeds will be moving towards the town center. And if the Zeds ever enter the town center, we lose the game. On the top left is the forest track. The forest track reaches the village of St. Thomas, passing through the farm and entering the mall district that is adjacent to town center. The top right is the mountain track that reaches Lefty's Pass, passes through the Lucky Strike Mine, then the campground, and finally the east side before reaching town center. Southeast of town center is the highway track, which passes through Ingeborg, the nuclear plant, before reaching downtown and then town center. And to the southwest is the suburbs track, which passes through the village of East Irek, Farmingdale University, another village which is Boxville, the Farmingdale Suspension Bridge, into suburbia, and then town center. Connected to the town center is Farmingdale General Hospital. It has 3 bed spaces where we can place units that have been eliminated but which have rolled successfully their survival die roll. These units may be returned to the game after being healed. Units that do not survive the saving roll when they're eliminated are placed in the cemetery. Refugees from the villages that we have just shown, if they reach town center, they are placed in the refugee camp, and from there they can be converted into civilians that can fight the Zeds. The game includes 7 civilian units, and we begin the game with 6 of them on the map, and we have to select them randomly and place them in each of the villages on the map, and the last civilian goes into town center. So we draw a civilian for East Irek and Boxville. And in this case we drew a 2-strength civilian unit for each one of these towns on the suburbs track. We place a defiance marker on top of these civilian units to denote that they may not leave those spaces until the Zeds engage them in hand-to-hand combat. We drew the strongest civilian unit, this one with a strength of 4, for St. Thomas on the forest track, and a 2-strength civilians unit at Lefty's Pass on the mountain track, as well as another 2-strength civilian unit at Ingeborg on the highway track. And finally we drew a 3-strength civilian unit which we place at town center, and notice that of all civilian units that start the game, this one does not start with a defiant marker. So that means we can move this unit anywhere that we like, irrespective of whether its space has been attacked. So the civilian unit that was not picked was this 3-strength civilian unit, which we removed from play. Now we select randomly one of the 6 heroic civilian units that will start the game, and that is the Fire Department 129 Auxiliaries. And they begin the game also at town center. Note also that in each village, in addition to civilians, which are the blue units with the defiant side, there are villagers, which are the yellow-colored units. The civilians in blue can actually fight the Zeds, but they won't move away from their village until they engage in hand-to-hand combat with the Zeds. The villagers don't fight the Zeds, and if the Zeds take their village, we flip the villagers and they become fleeing refugees. And the refugees will start moving towards the town center during the 4R phase, and also if we use actions to move them there. It is important to protect the refugees. They will be moving from time to time towards the town center. Once they arrive there, the infection level goes up by 1, but they are placed in the refugee camp. And from there, they can be exchanged with dead civilian units that are in the cemetery. So refugees allow us to bring back into the game units that can actually fight the Zeds. In this game, there's two types of attacks or combat, hand-to-hand combat, which occurs within a space between Zeds and human units, and gunfire attacks where our units can fire at Zeds that are one or more spaces away. Here we see the hand-to-hand combat table, and it is odds-based. And what we do is that we compare the number of Zed strength points to the number of human strength points. Let's say that 8 Zeds strength points are attacking 5 human strength points. We would start at the Zeds advantage column. And let's say that the attack occurs in a named space, like a village. One column shift would be applied to the right. And in this case, we would roll the dice and check the result in the equal to column. Now, we won't be showing this table in this playthrough. Instead, to keep things moving at a good pace, we will use certain signs that you will see during combat resolution. So let's say we have this battle to solve in the equal to column. What you will see is this sign that tells you the odds column, the final odds column in which the attack is resolved, and then you will see a die roll and then the result, in which case what we're seeing here, it would be the Zeds take 2 hits, signified by the 2 in the red background, and the humans suffer 1 hit. And you would see this sign popping up during the combat resolution. And then you will see the hits applied to the units that are participating in combat. And just to show you how that works, if the Zeds unit on the left takes 3 hits, it would be flipped to its reduced side. If it takes 3 more hits, it would be eliminated. But let's say, for instance, that in this particular combat it took 2 hits. So you will see this ×2 hit marker placed on the Zeds unit. Note that human units take considerably less hits to be eliminated. The civilian unit in the middle needs 2 hits for it to be flipped to its reduced side, 2 more hits, and it would be eliminated. And if Rusty Staub takes 1 hit, he would be flipped, and with a second hit, he would be gone. Now, a word about saving die rolls. Let's say that this result happened in combat. The Zeds suffer 2 hits. We place the hit marker with the ×2 side showing, and our civilian unit suffered 1 hit, which eliminates the unit. Whenever any of our units are eliminated, we must make a die roll with a d6. On a 1 to 3, the unit goes to the cemetery. And on a 4 to 6, it goes to Farmingdale General Hospital in a comatose condition, as signified by the green marker. Comatose units may eventually come back into the game by an action called healing. Let's suppose that we spend 1 action to heal the civilian unit in the hospital. The action would remove the comatose marker, and we would place the last hit marker it had before it was eliminated. We're about to begin our playthrough again. If the Zeds ever reach town center, we lose the game. Whenever the Zeds occupy a named location, a chaos marker is placed there. And if all 10 chaos markers are on the map board at any one time, we lose the game. We have all the civilians, villagers, heroes, and heroic civilian units on the map. Now we draw from the Zeds Cup 1 Zeds unit and place it in the starting space for each one of the tracks. And we start with the suburbs track. And we draw 5 strength Zeds unit. And in the forest track, a 4 strength Zeds unit starts. Meanwhile, in the mountain track, we have another 5 strength Zeds unit starting there. And finally, on the highway track begins a pretty powerful 7 strength Zeds unit. Each one of our heroes have special abilities that we will cover as the game progresses, as well as the heroic civilian unit, the Fire Department 129 Auxiliaries. So we begin by drawing the topmost event card, and it reads Hunting Lodge Located. And we proceed from left to right, going through each of the phases of the turn, starting with the 4R phase. And 4R stands for Raiders, Rangers, Refugees, and Rescuers. Now, there's no unit of those classifications or kinds on the map, so we don't move them right now, but suffice to say that during this phase, Raiders must move, and Rangers and Refugees can move. Now, Refugees will move if there is a number in that box. In this case, there's a 0, so if we would have Refugees on the board, they would not move at this time. The next phase is the infection phase, where we determine whether additional Zeds come into play because of an infection outbreak. During the infection phase, we consult the infection track and we roll 2 dice. If the result is equal or less to the infection level, we have a new Zeds unit coming into the map. Now, at the beginning of the game, the infection level is at 0. The card reads no, so we don't have to roll to determine if there is actually an outbreak at this time. The next phase is the eat phase, where we determine if we lose a supply point. Now, when we have the picture of a die, we roll a die and check to see if the die roll is equal or less to the number of our units in the hospital. But at the beginning of the game, we have no units in the hospital, so there's no chance of us losing a supply point this way. Next is the Zeds phase, and this is when Zeds move on the map towards town center. In this case, we have movement in the mountain track and the suburbs track, and we conduct this movement in the order that appears there. So we move the Zeds in the starting space of the mountain track, 1 space along the track, and they're in space number 6 next to the village of Lefty's Pass. Similarly, in the suburbs track, we advance the 5 strength Zeds unit to the number 6 space, which is next to the village of East Irek. The next phase is the action phase, where we conduct actions, and the number there is the number of event actions that we receive during this turn. We also note that there's some text associated to this phase. In this case, at the end of the phase, we will get +2 to our ammo level if we have one of our units in the campground. And the campground is along the mountain track, and we place this big goodies marker there to remind us that there's ammo to be gained by placing one of our characters or units there. So we have 3 event actions. We record these actions on the event action track, and it's also important to note that we also have 1 player action with which we can conduct actions. So we have a total of 4 actions in this particular turn. And it's important to note also that among Sheriff Hunt's abilities, he has a leadership ability which he may spend to give 1 civilians or refugee unit in a space with him or next to him 1 free action. And for that we use this leadership marker. We want to make sure we get those 2 additional points of ammo that are laying at the campground. So we will spend 1 event action to move El Toro Loco there. And as you can see, El Toro Loco has a movement allowance of 3 spaces. Now, when he is not on his reduced side, he has a hand-to-hand strength of 6 and a ranged gunfire attack value of 3. When he is in his reduced state, his hand-to-hand value goes down to 4 and gunfire at 2. El Toro Loco moves along the mountain track 3 spaces to reach the campground. Whenever there's an outbreak and a new Zeds unit enters the game, we draw a fate card and it will appear in the village space that is closest to town center on the fated track. Now, in this case, there are 2 villages on the suburbs track. All the other tracks have only 1 village, and Boxville is the closest village to town center, actually 4 spaces away from town center, which makes it a pretty vulnerable situation for us. So what we will do is we will spend our second event action to construct a barricade at Boxville. And what the barricade does is that it gives us 2 column shifts to the right, that is, in our favor, in hand-to-hand combat. If there was no barricade there, it would only be 1 column shift to the right because Boxville is a named space. The downside is that each barricade costs 2 supply points, so that reduces our supply points to 2. Now, of course, there's a way to increase our supply and ammo points, and that is through foraging. And here we see a miniature version of the foraging table, and we will use our third event action to have Rusty Staub forage in the town center. And for that, we would roll 1d6 on a 4 or 5. We would add 1 supply point on a 6. It would be either a supply point or an ammo point, whatever we choose. But before we roll, let's take a look at one of his abilities, Survivalist. When he performs a forage action, we gain 1 supply point in addition to the result on the table. So even if he fails to roll for extra supplies or ammo points on the forage table, he always gains 1 supply point. So we roll 1d6, and in this case the roll is a 4. We gain 1 supply point for the forage table plus 1 for the special ability of Rusty Staub. That increases our supply level back to 4. We still have our player action and any action as a result of Sheriff Hunt's leadership ability. So now we will use our player action to have Rusty Staub move his full movement allowance of 4 spaces to reach the nuclear plant, which is along the highway track. He is well on his way to help the folks at Ingeborg. And finally, Sheriff Hunt will use his leadership ability to have the civilian unit at town center forage for supplies. So we roll 1d6, and we got lucky again with a 5, so we get 1 additional supply point. And the supply level goes up to 5. Just spent all our actions, we're at the end of the phase, so now, because we sent El Toro Loco to the campground, we gain 2 ammo points, which increases our ammo level to 6. Having finished the action phase, we go to the housekeeping phase, where, among other things, we flip to their front sides the player action marker and Sheriff Hunt's leadership marker. And we remove the card that we just played. And now we proceed to the next turn by flipping the next event card. Supply room discovered. For our phase, and there's no raiders, rangers, refugees, or rescuers to move. We proceed to the infection phase. We make no infection die roll check, and we advance to the eat phase, and we would roll a die and compare it to the number of units in the hospital, but there's no units at the hospital, so there's no chance that we can lose any supplies now. On to the Zeds phase, and we have movement on the highway and mountain tracks. And the most powerful Zeds on the board for now, those on the highway track, advance to the number 6 space approaching Ingeborg. And those on the mountain track advance into Lefty's Pass, and we have our first hand-to-hand combat situation of the game. So the civilians lose their defiant marker. The Zeds with the strength of 5 attack the civilians with the strength of 2, so the Zeds have a ×2 advantage, and we begin at that column. But because the attack is occurring on a named space, Lefty's Pass, there's a 1 column shift to the right, And the attack is now conducted at the Zeds advantage column. We roll 2d6. And boy, we're extremely lucky. We roll boxcars, 12. 2 hits on the Zeds, and we suffer no hits. So the Zeds lose this combat situation, as shown by the background red color, and now they have to retreat from the space where they came from. And that's the end of this first hand-to-hand combat situation. Because there was a hand-to-hand combat situation, the infection level increases by 1. And that's the end of the Zeds phase. We go now to the action phase. We have 2 event actions. And we have some text here that indicates that at the end of this phase we gain 4 supply points if we have one of our units in the mall district. So we place a goodies marker there so that we don't forget. Given the impending proximity of this strong Zeds unit to Ingeborg, we will construct a barricade there. That uses up 2 of our supply points. Our second event action will be used to move Rusty Staub 2 spaces to Ingeborg. And we use our player action to move El Toro Loco with a movement allowance of 3. He'll move 3 spaces to reach Lefty's Pass. And yes, we've not forgotten about the goodies at the mall district, so we will use Sheriff Hunt's leadership ability to move the civilian unit 1 space into the mall district. And now we collect the goodies. And we add 4 points of supply, increasing the supply level to 7. We certainly cannot complain about our level of supplies and ammunition at the beginning of the game. This is not typical. We have zombies approaching Ingeborg, but we have a barricade there, and also Rusty Staub. Also, we repulsed the Zeds at Lefty's Pass. There's no Zeds advancing near the village in the forest track, and we have a 5 strength Zeds unit about to advance on East Irek on the suburbs track. So we perform housekeeping, and now we proceed to the next turn by flipping the next event card. Wandering Zeds. To the 4R phase, there's a 1 there. If there would be any refugees, we would have to move 1. At this time, there's no refugees on the board yet. On to the infection phase. Here we would roll 2 dice, and we would compare it to the infection level, which is currently 1. So it's impossible that the die result will be equal or less to the infection level, so we skip this phase. On to the eat phase, and there's a 0, meaning that we do not lose any of our supply points. And now the Zeds phase, and there's going to be movement on 3 tracks, but before we consult the text first, we select any civilians or hero unit on the card indicated by the fate draw that we will make, not in town center or any start space. And that unit immediately suffers a Zed's hand-to-hand attack on the equal to column. We apply normal infection increase and terrain shifts, and if the unit is a defiant civilians unit, it is no longer defiant. So we draw a fate card, and the card is Bridge Collapses, and we consult the top of the card to determine where the attack will occur, and it is on the suburbs track. So we select a civilians or hero on the suburbs track to suffer an attack on the equal to column, but we apply terrain shifts. And because we have a barricade already at Boxfield, we will select the civilians there. Because of the barricade, the attack will be made on the humans times 2 column. So we roll 2d6, and we roll a very healthy 9. In this case, we suffer no hits. The Zeds, if this were a regular attack, would have suffered 3 hits, but these are attacks by wandering Zeds, not represented by any counter in the game. And the civilians lose their defiant status marker, but the infection level does go up, and it is at level 2. And before proceeding with the event card, we have to consult the event on the fate card. Bridge collapses, and that happens right now. We place the bridge collapsed marker, which is a marker shown here on the suspension bridge space. And what this has as an effect is that our units, as well as raiders, cannot enter that space. We have to spend one action to flip the marker over to its ferry side, and this will allow our units to enter the space, but they have to stop for that move action if they do. And they must conduct another move action to leave the space. So we place the bridge collapse marker in the space here for the Farmingdale suspension bridge. And now we proceed to move the Zeds in the highway, suburbs, and forest tracks in that order. On the highway track, the Zeds advance on Ingeborg, and we have two of our units. We have to choose who will fight the Zeds. Will it be Rusty Staub or the Defiant Civilians? And in this case, Rusty Staub will fight until the last civilian, so we choose the Defiant Civilians. They lose their Defiant status marker. We start at ×3 for the Zeds, but because of the barricade there, 2 column shifts to the right apply, so the combat will be resolved. On the Zeds advantage column, we roll 2d6, and the roll is an 8, another high number. The Zeds lose 2, or take 2 hits. We take 2 hits. Now, who wins the battle? The side that doesn't have the background coloring. The Zeds have that red coloring, so that means the Zeds lose the battle, even though they have the same number of losses that we do. And because the Zeds lost, they retreat back to where they came from, and that's the end of that particular battle. And the infection level is now at 3. Next, on to the suburbs track. The Zeds, the final column is the Zeds advantage column. The civilians lose their defiant marker, and we roll 2d6. This time we roll a lowly 5. We suffer 3 hits, the Zeds only 1, and of course we lose the battle. And because we lost the battle, we have to retreat. The civilians that are down to their last hit retreat to Farmingdale University, and the villagers now turn into fleeing refugees. Meanwhile, the victorious Zeds take control of East Irek, and we see our first chaos marker appear in the game. And the infection level is now at 4. And to finish with the Zeds phase, we have movement on the forest track, and the Zeds advance 1 space in the direction of St. Thomas. On to the action phase, we only receive 1 event action. And we will use that event action to have Rusty Staub conduct a gunfire attack against the Zeds approaching Ingersburg. And Staub has another ability that comes into play now, crossbow armed. His first gunfire attack each turn does not cost any ammo points, although it still costs 1 action. This will be the first gunfire attack of the game. This is the gunfire attack table. We consult the table to see what the gunfire strength is, and we roll 2 dice, and the numbers there are the number of hits that the Zeds receive. So Staub has a strength of 4. We'll use this marker to denote his gunfire strength, and we roll 2d6. A less than impressive 5 yields 1 hit on the Zeds, and 1 hit is just enough to flip the Zeds to their reduced side. The situation along the suburbs tract is not very encouraging. The Zeds are about to fall on Farmingdale University, where there's fleeing refugees and civilians that are down to their last hit. If they are lucky, they'll make it to Boxville, but we cannot send anybody to their rescue because the Farmingdale suspension bridge has collapsed. So we will use our player action to flip the collapse marker to its ferry side. And we only have Sheriff Hunt's leadership ability left, and it will be used for a foraging attempt by the civilians that are currently in the mall district. But the die roll is a 2 and the foraging attempt fails. On to the housekeeping phase. And that's the end of this turn. As we see, the Zeds are starting to advance, although not in numbers, single units along each of the tracks. This, folks, is peaches and cream compared to what is about to follow. Now to the next event card. Highway Night Assault. And as signified by the 2 stars on the top left corner, this is the first card of Act 2. Act 2 means that things will start to get nastier from now on. And this is where we will leave this episode of Dawn of the Zeds Apocalypse Level. So in the next episode, we will continue with this playthrough, and we will play Act 2. So this is Stuka Joe, signing off for now. Thanks for watching.